it comes to a point where you just have to admit that Super Bowl 56 was like some sort of inside job from like automakers across the world, basically saying it's our time to get together to make all the commercials and just yell them in middle America's face and say, hey, guess what? Electric cars are here. Deal with it.
Yeah.
It was electric car after electric. We're going to Arnold Schwarzenegger, electric car. Oh, Dr. Evil, electric car. I know.
And then you're keeping up with the Jonases.
Yeah.
Got the Sopranos.
Kia, a really adorable wiener dog, robot dog, electric car. Like, it's just like forcing it down. Like, oh, Sopranos. Oh, you want, Tony Soprano, New Jersey, electric truck, Chevy. It's just like,
they really drove it home.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was just like, okay, I guess we all should just start preparing for the fact that electric cars are on the way. It's something we've known.
It came at a fitting time too, right? When the year that we've just had was a year where cars skyrocketed in value because there were no
chips,
no parts and all of that. So yeah, an interesting time. Like, please buy the cars. Please buy all of the cars.
Hey, we know you, Missouri farm owner in the middle of America, don't really want to buy an electric truck, but guess what? Here's Mike Myers. So you're gonna have to, because by 2035, that's all we're making. So we're giving you a 13-year warning to just get used to the fact that electric cars, Super Bowl, there you go, America. Like it felt like a poignant attack. Like they were hitting you on all sides, just
from every level.
The only non-electric car one was like the Eugene Levy, where he's like a superhero, and that was in like a Kia or whatever that was what is Brie Larson does those? Those are crap. They're not Nissan.
I don't know. I don't watch
Nissan. Nissan, new little hot hatchback thing. Like, all right, whatever. Okay. Tommy Lee Jones gets to yell at Nick Jonas. I was okay.
I was gonna say I didn't think I'd be seeing much of Tommy Lee Jones ever for the rest of the time. To be honest, I was like, it's been a while, Tommy.
Also, I appreciate the idea that you bring back Jim Carrey as the cable guy, iconic role, amazing movie, and also just say, oh, screw it. Let's just make sure the cable guy has jet black hair, even though it's been like 30 years since we've seen the cable guy.
Right. Yeah. Hey, the cable guy, business is good. He can clearly still afford those hair dyes.
Yeah. I loved it. Don't get me wrong, but I just was like, it was just, hey, America, here's a Pepsi, Pizza Hut. You're going to be driving an electric car in 10 years. Deal with it.
It did seem like they were really catering across the board. The whole product of the entire Super Bowl seemed to be catering to a very specific sect of the country, millennials in particular. You know, it's very much like mid 80s to mid 90s kids.
Yes.
That seemed to be the target audience for this particular Super Bowl, and I'm not complaining, because that was us. So
it was great.
But yeah, the halftime show was amazing. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit here as well. But this is it for the Football Lounge, wrapping up the 2021-22 season with our Super Bowl recap episode. And then, of course, we've got the offseason coming up in just a couple of weeks. This is like the most dead time, Mark, really, of the entire year, is right after the Super Bowl, and then the like 2 to 3 week gap before free agency starts, because then it's once again skyrocketed, off and running, and it's nonstop until the next Super Bowl.
And even the last week, even the first week, week leading into free agency, you get all the rumors. So and so has agreed to sign with. They just can't sign officially yet. It's like the NBA free agency as well. No, we have about a 2 week gap here now, and honestly, I'm glad we have it. I was so sick and tired of all day having to defend the fact that I thought it was a really good Super Bowl, overall. I thought it was
Yeah,
I had a bunch of coworkers all day like, nah, it's kind of boring. I'm like, no. That was when you get a game that's a one-score game for the majority of the game and into the fourth quarter in a Super Bowl, that is a total victory. I don't care who wins at that point in time. We as the fans win, especially after dealing with last year's Super Bowl and it wasn't even close from the get-go with the Chiefs offensive line and how bad it was. So no, I think, this playoffs, what was it, like 5 or 6 games in a row leading up to the Super Bowl? We're all incredible games. Well,
that may have tainted the experience for people. They were expecting something as epic as all these.
And even then, you had a game. That. Even then, you had a score with like a minute left to take the lead, and then a chance to go on a drive. And they even got, I think, a first down, right? And then they moved the ball a little, the Bengals, before.
It came down to a fourth down stop, and a stop 2 times in a row to get 1 yard. So. I mean, I don't know what more you could ask.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why you have to reserve judgment on a game, because to me, a fourth quarter of a otherwise quote unquote boring game could completely change the context of it all. I mean, the fourth quarter was pretty epic. I think most of us would agree with that.
The start of the first quarter was I was out of my seat. I was screaming.
The first play of the second half,
Lord.
Started off with fireworks too. I mean, so I think overall it was a pretty entertaining game. It maybe got off to a relatively slow start, but also, I mean, we had everything in this. You had some turnovers in there. You had your, once a game controversial call. We had everything that the NFL was probably hoping would happen just to create that those comments and create the discussions surrounding the Super Bowl. Unlike, as you mentioned, some of the Super Bowls we've been subjected to. The last Rams one, the one last year, that were not only boring, but didn't have much in the way of great narratives or anything like that, outside of obviously Tom winning, his 7th and being with the Bucs. But nonetheless, an exciting Super Bowl 56. The Rams end up overcoming a very, very sluggish start to the second half and make it worthwhile in the fourth quarter with a couple great drives. One particular great drive from Matt Stafford and company. So we'll kind of dive right in with our Super Bowl recap. Of course, with this being the end of the 2022 season, we're going to do a little bit of a reset here on the show. So we're going to have off the next couple weeks. We're going to do no show. It seems fitting to kind of just put a bow on it. We're going to Disneyland. Exactly. We are always winners, actually.
Yes.
So
I like how they said Disneyland too, because it's in Southern California. So, and I
didn't even.
If I was any of the Bengals or Rams players, I would have made sure before the game started. We're saying land, right? I ain't getting on a plane from LA to Orlando tomorrow. I will drive down 10 miles south to Anaheim to go to Disneyland. I ain't bleeping doing the cross-country flight to Disney World. We could say Disneyland, right? I'm sure they got the okay for that.
The only person probably not up for that trip is a one Van Jefferson, who not only became a Super Bowl champion, became a father on the same day. That was kind of crazy. I remember they were talking in the fourth quarter. I think someone tweeted out that
his wife
get
out of the game.
Wild stuff.
Him and poor Odell Beckham Jr., who's going to start, I guess, surgery soon, and then another offseason to rehab. The same ACL tear is apparently, and not official, but that's what all the preliminary reports are pointing to, that he tore that same ACL that he did, 2 years ago? And
I believe it was 2 years. 2020 season.
Brutal news for him. He was having such an incredible comeback year. And trade back with the Rams, especially. And we talked about it when Odell got signed by the Rams. I remember saying on the show, the best thing for Odell Beckham Jr. is to go out, not necessarily even put up giant stats, but to just show that you can be a part of a winning franchise and have a chance to win a ring and score some touchdowns. He did that and then some. He was kind of a model citizen for the Rams, for Odell's standards, especially the last, 8-9 weeks in this run. And he was great in the first half. And I thought his injury really unraveled the Rams in the first half to where they had to find themselves and pick themselves back up by their bootstraps at the start of the fourth quarter And then the Rams just dominated in the fourth quarter, scoring offensively, finding a rhythm, and then also defensively that pass rush in the front, that front four especially.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's funny because I said it on my show, on my Saturday morning show, and one of my things with picking the Rams, and I think it just I knew it was going to happen. I felt it, and then watch it unfold. It's one of those you're like, wow, I actually predicted this right. This is kind of cool, even though I was off on the score by just a couple points. But just that feeling of like, everyone's talking about, look at what the Bengals did. Look what the Bengals did to get there. I mean, they win their first ever home playoff game in 31 years, and they beat the Raiders. They go to the 1 seed, give up 9 sacks. They still win against Tennessee. They are in Kansas City down 21-3, and they battle back to beat KC. They're a team of destiny, The Rams, and I said this on the show, I was like, the Rams had to go against their division opponent, the Cardinals, who beat them in the regular season, and take them down. They had to then go to the defending Super Bowl champions and Tom Brady in Tampa, where they unraveled in the second half and had a miraculous comeback of their own with a late drive in a weight off their shoulder, huge moment for Matt Stafford, to then have to go through their arch rivals and a team that owns them.
Yep,
and
100%.
owns their head coach to win that. Like, they were these, the Rams were just as battle tested. And what happened? I said all this cancels out, and then the best players make the big plays at the big time moments. And Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford all did that in the fourth quarter. They made Sean Robinson, the defensive tackle, as well. They just made big time plays in those big pressure moments when the Bengals turtled a little bit. I mean, they had that field goal early in the third after the interception. They didn't score again, Dan.
Yeah. It was a moment for them to strike, and this is where you say, okay, you've got that little bit of a cushion. Now is where you have to really put the dagger, drive it in. I mean, at the point when it was 20-16 and the Bengals ended up getting the ball back, I want to say it was right at the end of the third quarter, if not the turn into the fourth.
Yeah.
That was the drive where they had a chance to really drive it home. And I mean, you need a touchdown there, and all of a sudden you're 9 points up, possibly 10, and really give yourself that freedom, because these teams were not driving very quickly outside of that very long touchdown pass to T. Higgins to start the second half, which obviously should have been called back due to the face mask, but I digress. Outside of that, these teams were not being given the big play. Neither one was, because they knew that that's kind of what both teams had relied on offensively for much of the season, especially in the playoffs. So they needed to sustain long drives. If you're the Bengals and you go up 10 points at the start of the fourth quarter, you're feeling pretty good about your chances of holding down the Rams from getting 2 scores, just because of the amount of time that it would require to take off of the clock at that point. But nonetheless, both teams kind of exchange punts, and then the Rams come up with that, signature Matt Stafford fourth quarter comeback drive where he has that incredible no-look pass on third down. That's, Pro Football Talk, and I have my issues with their reporting a lot of times, and I agree with them other times as well. But Mike Florio, I believe, runs their Twitter, and he tweeted out, there's nothing that the Rams are doing today that Jared Goff couldn't have done. And I was thinking, that pass right there is 100% what you brought Matt Stafford in for. Not only did he make the no-look pass to get Von Bell to inch towards the sideline and open up that window, but he zipped it in there with the force that only Matt Stafford can. I mean, he has a rocket arm. And so the combination of those skills and the leadership that he provides, I'm happy for Matt Stafford, not just that he won, but that he was a big reason why they won and making, those pivotal plays in those key times. I just thought that was a huge effort by him. But I mean, people are saying he should have been the MVP. I still think Cooper Kupp deserved it. And you could make the case for Aaron Donald, definitely as well, just because of the second half performance that he put on too. But I was kind of happy with how everything kind of played out there at the end.
Dan, I'll say, obviously, one of the things everyone wants to talk about is the T. Higgins offensive pass interference no call, and then the holding on Cooper Kupp. I believe it was Wilson in the fourth
Yeah,
quarter
Luke Wilson, I think
on
it
that
was.
3rd and 8, 3rd and goal. And, here's my thing is I know that there is moments in a game where, especially in the biggest games in the NFL, where you just have to say to yourself, the refs need to stay out of it. And I thought they did a good job of that. And then once that offensive pass interference no call, when T. Higgins should not have had that 75-yard touchdown, he blatantly grabbed his face mask. Jalen Ramsey's pulled his arm.
Yeah.
Jalen Ramsey was kind of already falling. I don't know if Jalen Ramsey would have made an interception. I don't know if he made the play, but you did something very illegal, grabbing the face mask, blatantly turning his head, and it turned into a 75-yard touchdown. When you're down at that point in time, remember, the Bengals were down 13-10.5. One play, first play of the third quarter, 75-yard touchdown on that play. All of a sudden, the Bengals go up 17-13. That was such a game-changing momentum play,
Definitely.
and it should not have counted because of the offensive pass interference, but it stood. The rest swallowed the whistles. I kept saying the rest of that game, I was watching it midway through the third, early in the fourth, I kept saying there's going to be a makeup call. It's just going to happen. The refs owe it to they owe it to themselves. They owe it to the Rams. The problem was, I think they had opportunities. There were some calls and no calls. I thought, well, like, oh, wait a minute, you should have called it there. And they did it on one that was so ticky-tacky in such a blatant moment where I could say, all right, you've been letting a lot of things go this game. You're calling that defensive holding. I'm glad they called it holding and not interference, obviously. But I think those things wash out. The Rams scored their touchdown then on that drive late in the fourth. And that's those two equaled out. Then you say, okay, you got a touchdown that was given to you on a bad call. The Rams got a touchdown given them on a bad call. I call that a wash. You look at the rest of the second half. I'm sorry, Bengals fans and Joe Burrow. I was a little disappointed in them overall, but their offensive line just gave up 7-8 sacks by the end of it. It was a Super Bowl record. It was bad. I mean, listen to this. They had the field goal after the interception where I tweeted out, I know this sounds crazy, but the Rams holding the Bengals to only 10 points after that horrible no call and then the interception deep in their own territory to start the third quarter, only 2 minutes into the third quarter, not even, and they held the Bengals to 10 points. That's a victory for the Rams. And after that moment, the Rams, then they go and they march down an 10-play drive. They get their own field goal. And then it's Bengals punt, Bengals punt, Bengals punt, Bengals punt. They had 4 possessions, all of them, 3 plays punt, 3 plays punt, 5 plays minus 2 yards punt, 7 plays, 24 yards punt. Then the Rams go on a long drive, 15 plays, 79 yards. They get the touchdown on that call. And I'm sorry, but the Bengals, that's that late fourth quarter, beginning of fourth quarter game plan was just not good enough. They could not protect Joe Burrow long enough. And the Rams defense stepped up and they stifled the Bengals at that moment. So I don't feel bad for Bengals fans. I think the calls equaled each other out. The Rams overall in those moments then in the fourth quarter, their big-time players made more big-time plays on offense and defense once the calls equaled each other out.
Yeah, and the fourth quarter is it's the most important quarter of the game. I mean, that's when you have to step up and actually come through and make the big plays, and they just didn't do it. I mean, to reiterate your point, they couldn't have started better in the second half.
Yeah,
a touchdown, an interception, and then a field goal. I mean, you got a 10-point swing there, plus ripping away momentum even from their offense by getting that
huge
turnover.
momentum.
I mean, you're in such a good position, and to go from there to 4 straight punts and then turnover on downs to end the game. That's 5 you had 5 possessions there to work with to put the dagger in. I mean, it didn't even have to come after your 10-point swing. It could have come in any of those 5 possessions afterwards, which is a lot for a fourth quarter. Most teams don't even get 5 possessions in that quarter. So the fact that they had those opportunities and couldn't, that you do have to say that, you missed opportunities there. And then you got to give credit to the Rams who were able to force those situations and actually come through in the big moments. And, there are obviously other questionable elements to it from the Bengals side of things, like, why is Joe Mixon not in the game in some of those critical downs, especially late on that 3rd and 1 when they handed off to Samaje Perine? I mean, that's the guy that you want to get that 1 yard instead of your 230-pound running back w's a Pro Bowl player and having
second leading rusher, I think, in the league this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a part where maybe you're thinking that they're out coaching themselves or outsmarting themselves to an extent. And that was kind of reminiscent to me of what Sean McVay did in the first Super Bowl that he had. And so this is Zach Taylor's wake-up call. And if he comes back again, then he'll have a game more like Sean McVay did have this time around.
And McVay had a bad game. I mean, I think overall
he did. He did really until the fourth quarter, I'd say, is when they really came through and made some key calls and things like that.
They stopped. They and I get it. The game was always close, so I was not too critical of the run calls, but it was so obvious the Rams just could not run the football. Whatever they were doing and everything, the Bengals had it sniffed out. Hubbard was great, and their defensive line for the Bengals, they sniffed out everything that the Rams were trying to do with the run game. And
they played great.
They did. And finally McVay, and then they started throwing the football more, and especially midway, early in the fourth and through the fourth quarter. That's where they got those 10 points, those crucial 10 points in the fourth quarter to actually get them the win. Is when they realized, listen, we just got to put it on Stafford, and even though we're missing OBJ and our starting tight end, and they were missing what's his name from earlier in the year as well, Woods. Like, I mean, this is this was a team that by the end of it, those last couple of drives,
they were hit hard.
They were hit hard, and Stafford. We'll get into the legacy talk here in a little bit, but I will always forever remember Stafford in the fourth quarter being really poised. I mean, he had his Matt Stafford moments. That deep ball, go long, throw interception in the end zone. That is classic Matt Stafford. Yep. That is him trusting his arm too much and not thinking through things enough, because he has that mentality of, I have to be a playmaker for my franchise, where he did a really good job this year overall as his first year in the Rams, toning some of that down, which like, no, you don't have to be the playmaker when you're surrounded by better players and a better franchise. But he still had some of those gunslinger bad moments. I will say this, though. I agree. I think the Bengals really missed their opportunity. They had all the momentum in the world, and then they had 4 straight punts. And you just can't do that. Even if you just get some of those drives to pick up a couple first downs, the 2 back-to-back 3-and-outs, you give up all that momentum there. You have no momentum left after that. You could argue after the 1 3-and-out, hey, you still have the lead. You held them to a field goal. But by that second 3-and-out, all that momentum you had off of the no call OPI and the interception field goal, it died. And that's going to haunt the Bengals, I think, for a long time. As we talk about the future of these teams, I think the Bengals' future is extremely bright. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I do think they have to wake up and look themselves in the mirror a little bit this morning and be like, listen, we had our chance. You can't blame the refs. Don't be mad at the refs if you're a Bengals fan. Overall, everything equaled out, in my opinion, overall. I think the game got a little over officiated at the end. I think they could have made the makeup call a little bit earlier. They could have found a way to even that score a little bit, but the score was evened. They each got a touchdown off of a bad call or no call. And overall, then the Rams scored more points beyond that. And in the key moments defensively, they were just better. This Bengals defense, the next step for them, we know the Bengals offense, you just need an offensive line. The next step for the Bengals defense is finding one more guy who's close to being just a game wrecker in the middle or on the edge. A guy who you just have to focus 2 blockers on at all times. That Bengals defense could really take a next step there. I think overall, Dan, the other thing I want to say about the game too is I thought the pacing of the game was great. I thought both coaches weren't overwhelmed. I thought they didn't overreact at times. I thought the Cooper Kupp pass was a bad play, and I thought the only reason they pulled that out was because of the Joe Mixon touchdown pass, which I thought was a ballsy but incredible play call, and you got to give Zach Taylor credit for that. Love that play call. And Joe Mixon, what a hell of a throw. I thought the only thing that I would say is like, oh, okay, that's a bad call, was the Cooper Kupp pass. If Cooper Kupp would have ran it, he would have had it. They had him fooled on just the end around anyways.
Well, and they had it. They had the play. He was open. It was just he sailed that ball 10 yards over his head.
Yeah.
They had the play. By the way, we were talking last week on the show about the prop bets and the various things. The 2.5 players attempting a pass. 5 players attempted a pass in this game. We had Joe Mixon, and then I think I said Johnny Hecker was going to, but I don't know if they credited him on the box score with an attempted pass. But they had that botched play in the first half.
Yeah,
I don't know where he tried to throw it. I don't know if they counted that. But you had Cooper Kupp and Joe Mixon.
4. Yeah, you had at least 4. It was. I was laughing. That was one that definitely hit. The Bengals +4. Obviously, good teams win, great teams cover. But I think overall, I thought it was a really great game, and I thought, I was sitting there in the end with Joe Burrow with the ball in his hands. I was ready for the magic, and I don't blame Joe for them at the end losing that game. The second half of that Bengals game, the second half was lost for the Bengals from their offensive line, and I think some overall fairly conservative play calling once they got up. And I think they got a little outside themselves. I think they thought, holy shit, we have the lead in the Super Bowl here. We just scored 10 points in 2 minutes. And I think they played a little defensively. And I think their offensive line just unraveled. And I think the Rams defense looked at it after the OBJ injury and said, we got to win this thing. And they did. I think the Rams defense went out and won the game really for the Rams in the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah, unsurprising fashion. I think that their defensive line versus the Bengals offensive line was the big topic for the past couple weeks going into this matchup. Now, I think the Bengals defensive line surprised us a little more than we thought in terms of how they were able to stymie that run attack.
Yeah.
But both teams did start how I envisioned them starting, with trying to feel each other out, trying to dominate the line of scrimmage. Neither could do that very well. The Bengals had to resort to that short passing game because that's really all they could do, because they didn't have enough time. Joe Burrow didn't have enough time throughout. I would say about that last play, though, he almost completed that. Kind of crazy enough. That was really close. And people are faulting P. Ryan for not diving for it, but it's a split second moment. I don't know if
you're not expecting the quarterback to throw at that moment in that way. I will say though, I've seen angles. Jamar Chase had beaten Ramsey on that play.
Yeah, Ramsey was on the ground, was he not?
Yes,
I think
that's where Joe wanted to go. I mean, that was probably how is Jamar Chase not your first look? Yeah. But they just didn't have the time. So I thought overall, it was a great Super Bowl. I thought it went pretty as much as we both kind of predicted. I think it was a little closer than you thought. It was right up where I thought it would be, kind of back and forth, feeling each other out. There'd be big plays. And in the end, like I said, the biggest player is going to make the big plays at the right time. And the Rams did that. They stepped up. This Bengals team, man, they're a little bit of an anomaly. It so sucks that football's over, because this Bengals team is one of those teams where they just want to keep going. They're young. They're hungry. I think them having this Rams team is older. Whitworth should retire. I think he should. And a Hall of Fame career for Andrew Whitworth now, especially with the Walter Payton Man of the Year, well deserved, and now getting a Super Bowl ring. And Donald is a veteran. Von Miller is a veteran. He's gonna be a free agent. Odell Beckham, obviously, free agent in the injury. The whole talk about Sean McVay retiring and all that, I think it's a bargaining chip for him as well. I think his agent knew before. Listen, they knew there's a possibility they could lose the Super Bowl. They want to stir up all that good press, that goodwill of the last thing you need to do is lose Sean McVay. You need to lock him up to a giant deal. I think he'll have the bank thrown at him this offseason. And I think it's very valid. I mean, Sean McVay in 2 years has taken this Rams team to the Super Bowl 2 out of his 5 years, and they've been competitive in every other year. And now I know they're in a little bit of a cap situation, a cap hell, but what are the Rams proven? That they just kind of don't care. And especially after
and that's the method.
especially if a Super Bowl win, I have a feeling they're going to commit to going back into the all-in approach, kind of like Tampa did last year, and to see how it works. It's going to be a fascinating way to kind of start the offseason here in the next couple weeks.
I mean, as long as you have a quarterback of some sort, or it could be included in the acquisition, you can go all in every year. And I think that's what they're trying to show, is that, teams have this perhaps a myth of the rebuild, that it's required, that you have to suck to get good.
Yes.
And you don't have to a lot of times. A lot of times it's about what you're willing to pay for, and can you go out and find the right guys to pay for to put into that room. I mean, we talk about, like, OBJ was a phenomenal acquisition, especially because of what we saw happen to Robert Woods literally just days after the acquisition of OBJ. Von Miller, that addition, huge to that team. So it's not just about throwing money at free agents. It's about throwing money at the right free agents. Jalen Ramsey's been, a huge part of that defense. I mean, they don't have any, standout middle linebackers or like incredible, defensive ends outside of Von Miller. It's all about just the
retirement.
Guy.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like
exactly.
They did show that you could piece it together, but it's risky because, as the Bucs tried to do in this year with older players and veterans and a lot of star power, it leads to knick-knack injuries, and that can completely derail your season. Listen, I'm to put a little bit of a button on it and then get into some other things. I want to talk Matt Stafford here, but also the Burrow and the Bengals. I'll just say this: I thought it was a really good game. I thought it was an entertaining watch. I think Alan and Chris and Michelle, it's good for Michelle. She gets retired. I thought NBC did a great job. I didn't love the new score bug. I thought overall the pace of the game was really good. I mean, I saw a tweet that was like the game started at official kickoff was like 6:40 Eastern time. The game ended at 10 Eastern time. I mean, it was a good paced, moving Super Bowl, even though the halftime show felt really long to set up and really long to do and get through. Not that it wasn't entertaining. I loved it, but it felt the weight of the halftime show. I thought it was overall just a really good game. And again, anytime you get a Super Bowl that's not, listen, you want it to be a one-score game. You don't want it to be like that Rams-Patriots where it was, 10-3 like the whole game and then ends up being 13-3 or whatever. Anytime you get some scoring, big plays, and it's a one-score game, that's a good game in Super Bowl history, in my opinion. And I will say this, though. It did seem as though, to me, there was a moment watching where I felt like this doesn't have the weight that I feel like it should. And maybe that's because it wasn't Tom. Maybe that's because it wasn't Mahomes. Maybe that's because it wasn't Aaron Rodgers. Now, these teams now have a chance to then, if the Bengals play in a Super Bowl again or the Rams play in a Super Bowl again within the next year or two, it'll feel like it has that weight because it starts to build on that. With Mahomes playing another Super Bowl, it's like, oh, crap, he's going for 2. Like, that's next level. You know what I mean? Oh, or Brady going for 7. Like, it didn't feel like it had that special just kind of weight to it. And maybe that's also because as a football fan at this point in time, I honestly, and I kept saying it, I felt like an idiot, but it's true. I was like 50-50. Whoever wins, I'll be really happy for them. You're disappointed for the losers because there's good guys, but like, I got no evil. There's no bad guy in the fight here. I have no animosity towards the Bengals. I kind of have a kindred spirit, I feel like, with the Bears, the Bengals, franchises that just struggle and a lot of mediocrity, bad ownership. For them to get their shot, you kind of feel for them like, hey, get one for the little guys. And for the Rams, obviously the Matt Stafford was the whole story for me, and having watched so much of his career, couldn't be more happy. And Dan, I if you have any final thoughts on it, go for it. But I would transition and pose the question to you. Let's talk a little bit of Matt Stafford and what this does for him and what the future looks like. Because I got some crazy shit brewing in my head about Matt Stafford and now where he belongs in the conversation for quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I still struggle with that. I don't know if I consider him. I consider him a fringe Hall of Famer at the moment, and I still feel that way. Like I would put him in over Phillip Rivers, to be honest.
Well,
because
yes,
now he has
100%.
the Super Bowl.
100%.
Now he's gotten there, and he had all of those years with just such a underperforming, underachieving franchise that's just known to be that. Whereas, Phillip had LT and he had Vincent Jackson and he had a lot of the, Antonio Gates. Like he had a pretty solid supporting cast. They just couldn't get over the hump. Whereas Stafford, outside of Calvin Johnson, I mean, he never had a top 10 defense.
Yeah.
Never had a great O-line. He just had one guy. So I give him the benefit of the doubt in that regard. And now that he's proven, okay, once he got to stability, the first, whiff of it, he gets a Super Bowl. So I think that puts him ahead of it. But I still think there's maybe just a little bit more work to be done. And I think that work will be done over the next 3-4 seasons. So, I just think he's a couple seasons away from putting himself in that category. And all that is required, I think, is just more regular season wins and a couple more playoff wins to help solidify that for him.
So that's great. I mean, I don't disagree with a ton there. I think Matt Stafford is now definitely a Hall of Famer, in my opinion, getting the ring, because he's going to have the numbers that Rivers had.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Now he's got the ring. Like that's the separator. Like what did we say when Rivers retired? Rivers is at least your base. You have to have at least these numbers to be in the conversation. And then what do the rings do for you as far as legacy on there, on up? I think what I mean, though, is like legitimately against his own peers, because you see it now. Like, look at now that Brady especially is gone and all the rest of the old guys are gone. Breeze is gone. Roethlisberger's gone. The Mannings are gone. Rivers is gone. Brady's gone. These generational quarterbacks are gone. And these multiple Super Bowl winners are gone. Mannings each had 2. Brady had 7. Obviously Breeze is 1, but doing it in New Orleans, iconic. Big Ben had 2. You start to look around the league. Who are the guys with rings? Stafford's got 1 now. Rodgers has 1. And Mahomes has 1. And then Russell Wilson has 1. And I say to myself, Dan, I'm like, is it crazy to say that right now, as much as I love Russell Wilson and has been on the Russell Wilson bandwagon guy, he had such a weird and bad year. And just who he is as a player, like Matt Stafford now, how can you not start to argue that Matt Stafford deserves to be higher ranked than some of his own competitors and his peers? I mean, we know the toughness that Matt Stafford plays with, the broken back, the dislocated shoulder as a rookie, all those bad years in Detroit where he was fighting tooth and nail to win games. You say to yourself, if Matt Stafford, I hate to be Skip Bayless, but I think it's worth even thinking about, like Matt Stafford versus Aaron Rodgers, if their careers were they're on the opposite teams. Like, what does that look like? And
I mean, it could be different. It definitely could be different, but it's just, that's sometimes how things shake out in the NFL, right? Yeah. I mean, I wonder what Archie Manning would have looked like if he was on the New York Giants at the time or something, I mean, he was a great quarterback that never won more than 5-6 games in a season. And it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of life. I mean, I don't think we could argue in terms of talent there. That's where the eye test comes into play. Like Russell Wilson is clearly a better overall quarterback than Matt Stafford, in my opinion. And maybe in the next 3 years, say Matt Stafford wins 2 more rings and is the biggest reason or one of the biggest reasons for that, then maybe you start to reconsider that element of the game, where it's like, okay, yeah, Russell Wilson's a little bit more talented, but Stafford has 3 Super Bowls and, dealt with all of those years of absolute chaos. Then I'd have pause. But if I'm looking at it right now, I mean, like, and I get what you're saying, but it's like, in terms of the talent, it's so heavily weighted in his contemporaries' favor at the moment. But that could change.
And I think that's a large part of that narrative is because it's been built, it's been ingrained. I mean, Russell Wilson won early and he kept winning until really this year. I mean, this is his first bad year. Stafford was bad and then had a couple of nice seasons with Caldwell and then was bad again. And now he's got a ring. It's a weird Stafford's career is so unique in that way. But I do think it's interesting, and I put together, and it's something we need to do this offseason because that's where this discussion will be. We can really hash it out. It makes me feel pretty strong in the saying that if you're trying to say, hey, you can pick any quarterback for your team for the next 2 years, where does Stafford rank versus Rodgers, Wilson? Not 3, not 5, not 10, but just any quarterback in the NFL for the next 2 years. I'd still probably take Mahomes 1, maybe Josh Allen 2. But I think Stafford starts to move up that ladder a lot quicker because you realize, hey, as long as your organization has some sort of level of support and around Matt Stafford and is competent, the dude is a winner. He's got way more fourth quarter comebacks. He's got more playoff fourth quarter comebacks now than Aaron Rodgers, even though Aaron's been in the playoffs a lot more. He's got the same amount of Super Bowl wins, the same amount of NFC Championship wins as Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's that whole same thing as Tom Brady did. So you just start to put these arguments if winning matters, and I think it does, especially the quarterback position for guiding your team and leading. It's not everything because, as we said, there's people stuck in bad organizations. It starts to make it, to me, a lot more interesting of where Stafford maybe ranks all time when all careers are said and done. And again, we don't know how they're all going to be written versus Rodgers versus his contemporaries, because he really is a Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers contemporary. And they're now the old guys in the league. Him, Matt Ryan. Yeah. Matt Ryan. Who else? Who's else still left standing from that generation?
In terms of current NFL quarterbacks, pretty much.
Anyone pre 2015. So
Jimmy G, I guess, but he's not on par.
He's obviously that draft class, isn't he? But, I mean, it's Wilson, it's Ryan, it's Rodgers, it's Stafford. I'm going to be so pissed if we're missing one.
I don't know if Tannehill.
Tannehill,
because he's been around for a little while
in that group. But yeah, that's really it. Joe Flacco's gone. And they were kind of those group of guys right after the legends who just retired, and they're not certainly that next group of the Mahomes and younger.
Derek Carr.
Okay, you could maybe put Derek Carr. He's kind of stuck in there.
He was 2013 draft class, I think.
Yeah, he's a little more. He's more of a veteran now than he is a young guy in that way. Yeah. But I think it's huge. I think it's huge for Matt Stafford. I really do. I think, and I'm certainly pumped for him. And as far as Joe Burrow goes and the Bengals, what are your thoughts on the Bengals, their future, and this is a legacy thing for Burrow?
Yeah, the one thing I was, I guess I'm not surprised by it, but the one thing I always want to push back against a lot of times, and I get the need or the want to bring this up when someone loses, especially for teams and people that are relatively likable and, guys you root for, like a Joe Burrow, is, don't worry, they'll be back here. Let's pause for a second.
Yeah.
It's incredibly hard to get back there. So, I just want, I don't know, that's the instant thing people go to is oh, they'll be back. Will they? We don't know that. Because Joe Burrow, it's clear that he is a franchise quarterback. He's a guy that can, win games, win playoff games, lead, all of those things. He's got it all. That doesn't mean that he's getting back. We've seen it time and time again. And it seems like people have very I guess a revisionist history when it comes to looking at things like that, because we've talked about it here on the show. Tell that to Aaron Rodgers. Tell that to Ben Roethlisberger the last 11 years of their careers. You would have guaranteed that they would get back at some point.
Tell that to J Blige. Tell that to Dan Marino. Maybe Dan Marino's the epitome of that.
Yeah, and if Peyton Manning doesn't go to the Broncos, maybe he doesn't get to another Super Bowl with the Colts. As legendary as he was, a top 2-3 quarterback to ever play the game. He only got to one. Got to 2 with the Colts, right?
And 1-1 with the Broncos. Yeah, he made 4.
So,
but again, Peyton Manning, to me, the second greatest quarterback of all time, he made 4. That. You're absolutely right. That's how hard it is. I will say, I do think the reason why it's a little bit easier to say, not that they'll get back, but I think it's easier to say this Bengals team is legit and this Bengals team has a bright future. and should be considered right now with Buffalo and Kansas City, I think all fairly equally the favorites in the AFC, is because their problems are so identifiable and they have a ton of cap space. They do not have a bunch of aging veterans. They're not built already on a bunch of star power. It's a young core with a young head coach in a division with real questions now in the old man and the leader of the division with Pittsburgh. Your other upstart low level competition, the Browns, they had a massively disappointing year, but they got a lot of talent. And the Ravens, injuries completely derailed them. But even then, they're not the same team. Wink Martindale's gone. What are they going to look like? So their division is winnable, and they have to really just identify the simple thing. Their draft, I saw a great tweet. I think it was from Jeff Schwartz, one of the Schwartz brothers. And it was like, doing the mock drafts, if you're a Bengals like writer in Cincinnati, is the easiest thing.
Yeah, all offensive linemen.
Best offensive lineman available for the first 5 picks. Just that's all you have to do. And then can you convince one of the game-changing pass rushers or who's hitting free agency or go make a trade for a game-changing pass rusher to come and really help anchor that defensive line along with Hubbard, team up with is it Hubbard or why am I
well, Sam Hubbard, but Trey Hendrickson.
And just really
obviously on the outside there.
Someone or a real incredible playmaking linebacker, someone who can get after the quarterback and be a real, like, the holy crap, the guy you have to account for on that defense. Because they have a lot of good pieces, but none of them are like, oh, there's an all pro, there's an all pro, there's an all pro. So if you add an all pro to that defense, and then you work tirelessly to fix the offensive line, and the offensive line can be a mishmash of new young guys you draft and bring in a veteran, bring in a couple of veterans. Like, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be all rookies. You know what I mean? Do what the Chiefs did. They fixed their offensive line in one offseason. So I do think the Bengals' future is very bright, but you're absolutely right.
It is.
It's hard to say to get back, because even after this run from Joe Burrow, as far as the young quarterbacks go, I would still put him third behind Mahomes and Allen of the guys I would take for the next 3 years. You know what I mean? If you're just doing a smaller window.
Yeah, and I mean, Herbert's certainly in that discussion still.
I think he is. I would give Burrow the nod over Herbert because of this run. I think is one of those things where it's like, well, shit, that's something that's pretty damn special. And you proved a lot in this moment. And, Herbert's got a really solid offensive line and those weapons. Now, he's got a tougher division, I think, overall, the AFC West, with Mahomes in it and having to know that you're basically going to be stuck as a wild card spot every year. But I think, there's some intangible leadership quality to Joe Burrow that, to me, especially after seeing it in this playoff run, gives me the nod over Herbert. He's right there. Herbert's right there. But, it's tough. It's going to be really tough for the Bengals, but their issues aren't tough to fix. Well, they're not.
That's a fair point.
They're tough to fix, but they're not hard to identify.
Yeah. And they're fixable by just a couple actions versus like needing something to happen that you're unsure of. Hey, we need our quarterback to end up taking the next step. Well, that already happened. So you know what you have in a lot of those areas. I agree with that.
And I think Burrow would be willing to sign one of those long, big deals, like a Mahomes deal, where it's a lot of money, but if you spend it over 10 years, you can constantly manipulate the cap. Yeah. And he can, and I think he's willing to do that because he knows Cincinnati's not a free agent destination. But I think he also knows that he can start building his brand of being an endorsable person now after this is just going to be, it's going to be through the roof. Joe Burrow is going to be Baker Mayfield's commercials times 10 if he wants it. Like, that money's available for a guy like Burrow. He's got the personality for it. And I think it's worth mentioning the Rams are about to lose their offensive coordinator. He's going to take that Vikings job.
Yeah.
No one's poaching the Bengals coordinators right now, to my knowledge. You know what I mean?
True. I mean, in terms of the commercial aspect of the thing, I mean, Cigar Aficionado magazine has its, cover person for the next 10 years, honestly, if they want it.
He's got it.
With him. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the halftime show because I for the most part, outside of the crazy predictable angry people on their front porch yelling, this isn't real music, everyone pretty much liked it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was one of the better halftime shows I've seen. I still think Prince, Bruno Mars in recent memory are like definitely up there. But I thought the set was incredible. I thought it was awesome how they did that with the 4 sectioned off
on the map of
places
Compton.
underneath. Yep. It was the choreography was awesome. I thought Snoop is just so cool all the time. His outfit was amazing. Just the whole thing about it was cool. The 50 Cent hanging down thing I thought was kind of weird, but like whatever. It was overall, I thought it was pretty sweet. I thought that was job well done.
Yeah, I thought the 50 Cent appearance was great. I thought, hiding, you knew there was going to be someone who they didn't show.
Yeah.
I thought 50 was a great choice for that. I'll say this. I think I have 3 main points I'll go over for the halftime show. Number 1, I really liked it because when you watch for example, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Jennifer Lopez for a halftime show, right? When you watch someone like them, you immediately are going to spend a lot of time focusing on the outfits. You're going to spend a lot of time focusing on the choreography and the wow factor because they're
colors, the pyrotechnics.
Yeah, they're pop stars. Like the pop, and you expect that with a pop star. Like I need the dancing, I need the giant choreography, I need Katy Perry to come riding in on a tiger and Lady Gaga to jump off the stadium because they're pop stars. Like that's what they do. So what I love about rap and R&B, and that's what is so great about it, is they just let the music speak for himself. Yeah, Kendrick Lamar did a little thing, and I thought that was kind of cool with the boxes and the little slight choreography. Awesome. But overall, it's just, nope, give me a microphone and let me get on the stage. And
it was raw.
Starts that, and then Eminem obviously is one of the epitomes of that. So I love that because it immediately takes out the whole, like, well, I didn't really like the outfits, or I didn't like you know what I mean? Like, why did she jump off the roof? I hate that stuff when you're dissecting a halftime show and all that. So I love that about it. The other thing, the second point that I really will say, I absolutely despised, and I tweeted this out, the fact that it was still light out when the show started. The kickoff in LA was 3:40 local time. So by the time the show started, the stadium, which is, even though it's got a roof on it, it's all windows and open air. So you still have all this sunlight. And there's something about, if you go back and look at like great halftime shows, it's dark, and the lights, then the effect of the lights and like only seeing the performers and not seeing what you see of the crowd is just kind of bodies, but like then lights and strobes, and they do things. I didn't feel
immersed.
Yeah, I didn't feel visually like, whoa, because it was still light out. Not because of what they planned, but because it's like, as they zoom in on Dre and Snoop, as they're standing on those little like house things, it's like, oh, I can see all the faces of the people like sitting, you know what I mean? Like there's just something about it being dark. Like when JT did it a couple years ago, when he got to redeem himself, and it was completely pitch black in the stadium, and he's like in the audience and he's popping up in random places. And like, that was just, you misses that effect when it's not totally pitch black. That's just the one thing I'd say about it visually. And then finally, I will be slightly critical. I love me some Mary J. Blige. She's fantastic, right?
Yeah.
I thought she was the only one that sold out a little bit. The Mary J. I know from TRL, being a kid in the late 90s, early 2000s, and watching Carson Daly on Total Crest Live and watching all the music videos, would not be out there like tits out, here's my booty, and doing drop like grinding moves. I thought she played in a little bit too much of the whole, like, this is what, you have to do to be this is what Megan Thee Stallion would do, or this is what Cardi B would do. This is what Nicki Minaj would do. This is, insert name of,
you just felt like she got away from her identity.
I felt she got away. She's got an incredible voice. Mary, go out there and belt it and do your thing. So I thought she got away from herself a little bit. She was still great, if I was going to be critical, and again, it's barely a critique and it's a silly one because I thought it was a great halftime show. That would be my critique. It was a little too light out. I wish the stadium was dark, and Mary got a little away from herself. I love they saved Eminem for the end. Eminem, obviously, I listen to him more than Snoop or Dre, and certainly Kendrick. And so I thought it was great.
I thought it was great too. Maybe the lighting thing also played a factor, whereas they wanted to show off SoFi as much as possible, and so
maybe
want to show off all the. Yeah, it's a gorgeous stadium, but yeah, I thought overall job well done. That's going to be a hard one to top next year. In Arizona, we'll see kind of how that pans out. I think it's in New Orleans after that.
No, Arizona, Vegas,
New Orleans. Okay, that's what. Yeah,
those are your next
three.
We
got the next three lined up for that. So yeah, that'd be good.
SoFi is going to be the opening and closing ceremonies of the 2028 Summer Olympics. And
is that right?
LA.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I've always said for years, and once LA got the Olympics, I think 4 years ago they announced it, or maybe it's been longer now. My goal is to go to a U.S. men's basketball team game, like just watch them destroy, Chile in America, like in an American Olympics, like just full on body paint, American flag, just Team USA, be a super fan for the Olympics. So LA 2028, my goal is to be there for at least part of it.
That'd be pretty cool. That would be very cool. Yeah. By the way, LeBron over the week obviously became the league's all-time leading scorer in regular and postseason. Now, is this, to my knowledge, this is not what they consider in the record books. Is that correct? So it's just regular season that they consider?
Yes, it'll be noted.
He still has work to do on that front then, right?
Yes, and it'll be noted that he's the all-time scorer. Like, it's noted, but when you talk about official lists, it's like the NFL. They don't count all of Tom Brady's records are regular season. Right. I think it's one of those things where
it did surprise me, though, because Kareem was in so many playoffs.
Yeah.